All right, so let's dive into this whole AI thing.
Okay.
You know all those language models that like everyone's talking about these days, ChatGPT and all that?
Right.
Ever like type in a question and then you get an answer that's like, whoa, this is so good, it must have been written by an actual human.
Yeah.
So we're gonna like peel back the curtain a little bit and see how these things actually work.
Yeah.
So we're using this blog post by Marja Jakin. It's called Hoe taalkundige modellen werken, een stapsgewijze handleiding. And you can find that on her website at marjajakin.com.
Cool.
Now, it is in Dutch, but don't worry, we'll break it down for you in plain English.
Okay.
So by the end of this, you'll be able to like drop some serious AI knowledge, at your next dinner party.
All right. So get ready, because these language models, they're basically like prediction machines, just on steroids.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They've been fed so much data that they can just guess the next word in a sentence with like scary accuracy.
Really?
It's all based on what you've already typed
Yeah.
and the overall context.
So it's kind of like when you're talking to a friend and you kind of already know what they're going to say next,
Exactly.
but like way more complex.
Yeah, much more complex.
Okay.
So the blog post breaks it down into like 10 steps.
Okay.
And the first one is input,
Okay.
which is basically just your prompt, the question or message that you give to the model.
Okay.
So let's just say you ask, what causes climate change?
Okay, so the model has the question now.
Right.
Then what?
So then it goes to tokenization.
Okay.
And this is where it kind of chops up your input into these little pieces called tokens.
Okay.
And these could be whole words or parts of words or even individual letters.
Wow.
It's like breaking down a recipe into ingredients.
Okay.
So what causes climate change becomes what causes climate change.
Okay.
And this helps the model just process the information more efficiently.
Okay, so it's all chopped up. What happens next?
This is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
So it moves on to context understanding. So it doesn't just look at the individual words. It actually figures out how they relate to each other
Wow.
to like get the meaning of your prompt.
Okay.
And it even goes further than that by considering past messages in the conversation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so this ability to understand context, this is like
Yeah.
a huge leap from those old school chatbots.
Right.
That, could barely even follow a simple thread.
Right.
Some people think this is like a form of thinking.
Really?
Yeah, it gets pretty philosophical.
Wow, so the model understands my question and remembers what we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
And then-
we get to model processing.
Yeah.
And this is where like the magic happens.
Okay.
This is where the model uses its neural network,
Yeah.
which is this incredibly complex web of connections that has been trained on massive amounts of data
Okay.
to come up with the best possible response.
Wait, neural network.
Yeah.
That sounds really complicated. Can you break that down a little more?
So yeah, imagine like a network of interconnected nodes,
Okay.
kind of like a giant brain.
Okay.
So there are different types of neural networks, like RNNs and transformers,
Mm-hmm.
and they all have their own strengths and weaknesses.
All right.
And they've been trained on, like I said, huge data sets,
Right.
which lets them analyze patterns and relationships between words and concepts.
Wow.
So when you ask about climate change, the model's neural network is going to use all of its knowledge
Okay.
to connect things like greenhouse gases and deforestation,
Mm-hmm.
because it's seen those associations so many times in its training.
So it's basically just making connections and predictions based on everything it's already learned.
Exactly.
Okay, so what happens next?
So then it moves on to response generation.
Okay.
This is where it actually builds the answer word by word.
Oh.
Yeah, by predicting the most likely word to come next.
Okay.
You can think of it like a supercharged autocomplete,
Right.
but instead of just finishing your sentence,
Mhm.
it's creating a whole response.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so like the blog post uses the example of starting with the causes of climate change include, and then continuing from there.
Now imagine the model has this awesome response all put together.
Right.
What happens to all those little tokens from before?
So it has to make it so you can understand it, right?
Right.
So then it goes through detokenization.
Okay.
So you remember how it chopped up your input into those tokens?
Right.
This step puts them back together to form readable text.
Okay.
It's like assembling a puzzle.
Okay.
You have all the pieces, and you have to put them back together to see the full picture.
So it's like taking all those individual words and phrases and stitching them back together into a sentence.
Exactly.
I feel like that's where things could go wrong.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
You can get some funny results.
Okay.
Like it might accidentally put words in the wrong order. So it sounds a little weird.
So it's like the model is trying to learn human grammar and syntax
Yeah.
on top of everything else.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
But I can see where there could be some issues.
Yeah. but it's getting better and better over time with continuous learning and feedback.
Okay, cool. So the model's got a response. It's all pieced back together.
Right.
What happens next?
So then it goes through filtering.
Okay.
And this is where it checks to make sure it's being appropriate and respectful and not saying anything harmful.
Okay, so it's like a built-in safety net.
Exactly.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Especially with all this talk about AI safety these days.
Right.
Good to know they're keeping things in check.
Right.
So after the filtering, then we're like at the finish line.
Almost.
Okay.
So the last step is output.
Okay.
This is where it delivers the response all ready for you to read.
Okay.
So in our example about climate change, the output might be like, the main causes of climate change are greenhouse gases, deforestation, and industrial activities.
Wow. That's really impressive.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much goes on just to get those simple responses.
Right.
But wait, it doesn't stop there, does it?
You're right. It keeps learning.
Oh, really?
Yeah. This is where feedback loops come in.
Okay, so even after it gives me the answer, it's still learning.
Yeah.
How does that work?
So every time you use the model, you're giving it feedback
Oh.
with your questions, your reactions, the way you phrase things.
Okay.
It all helps it understand language better and give you better responses.
Wow.
So if a lot of people ask for more detailed answers, the developers can change it
Oh, okay.
to make it give longer answers.
Oh, wow.
It's like a giant feedback loop where everyone's helping it evolve.
So that's really cool.
Yeah. So we're not just using it passively.
Right.
We're actually shaping how it learns.
But how does it stay up to date with like all the new information in the world?
So that's where continuous learning comes in.
Okay.
So these models are regularly updated with new data
Oh, wow.
to stay current with new trends and events and language patterns.
So they're not just stuck in the past
Exactly.
with old information.
Right. They're always evolving and getting more sophisticated.
Okay.
So like the blog post says, if there's a new scientific discovery about climate change,
Yeah.
the model will get updated with that information.
Oh, wow.
It's like having a personal AI researcher who never stops learning.
That's amazing. So it's not just about that initial training, it's
Yeah.
about constantly adapting and evolving.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a lot to take in. We've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah, we have. So maybe we should like step back for a second and like look at the big picture here.
Yeah.
We've gone through these 10 steps of how these language models work,
Right?
from like taking your input and all the way to delivering that response.
Right.
It's a pretty impressive process, wouldn't you say?
It really is. It's mind-blowing how much is going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, and like the crazy things, this is just the beginning.
Really?
Yeah, like as they continue to like learn and evolve, who knows what they'll be able to do.
Wow.
Like imagine having a conversation with a model and it can understand you and answer your questions,
Yeah.
but it can also like compose music or write poetry or even write code.
Wow. That's a little
It
intimidating.
is right.
Like, what does it all mean for us humans?
Right. That is the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
But maybe for now, let's just focus on like what we've learned about how they work.
Huh.
What stood out to you the most?
Honestly, for me, it was the whole idea of context understanding.
Okay.
The fact that these models can remember what we talked about before
Right?
and use that information to like give me better answers is just incredible.
Yeah. It's amazing.
It's like they're really starting to get like the nuances of how we talk to each other.
Right. It's not just mimicking anymore.
Exactly.
It's these old chatbots.
Right.
It's not a keywords anymore.
Yeah.
It's about like what's behind the words, all those little cues that we use
Right.
that make human language so complex.
It really is fascinating.
It is.
And the fact that they're always learning from us through those feedback loops is pretty wild too.
It really is. It's like talking to someone who just keeps getting smarter
Right.
with every conversation. And like, think about what that means.
Yeah.
Like the more we use them, the better they get.
That's crazy.
It's real collaboration.
So we're all kind of contributing to this technology.
Exactly, whether we realize it or not.
Wow. So it really makes you wonder about the future of communication.
It does. Like,
Hmm.
what happens when these models are so good at understanding us that they become like the main way we communicate?
Right. Because like we use digital communications so much already.
Exactly.
Like email, texting, social media.
Right. What if it was all powered by AI?
Right. That could anticipate our needs and write the perfect message.
Exactly.
Eh,
And even like help us resolve conflicts.
Right. So it could change how we interact with each other.
It could also create new problems.
Right.
Like what happens to just the art of conversation,
Yeah. Do we lose something if we just let the AI do the talking for us?
Exactly. It's a lot to think about.
It really is. But like you said, we're the ones in control, right?
Right.
We choose how to use this technology.
Exactly.
But speaking of control, we talked about that filtering stage earlier. where the model makes sure it's being appropriate.
Yeah.
How does that actually work? Like, who decides what's appropriate?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something that's being debated a lot in the AI community.
Oh,
There are a bunch of different ways to do it,
Okay.
but it usually involves like rules and machine learning.
Okay.
So the rules are basically guidelines that the model has to follow.
Okay.
Like don't be offensive or don't say anything harmful. And the machine learning part is trained on all this data
Right.
to help it identify stuff that's bad.
So it's like a two-pronged
Yeah,
approach.
exactly. Rules and learning working together.
But who makes the rules and does the training?
Right, because that's where bias could come in,
Exactly.
depending on who's making those decisions.
So it's super important to have different kinds of people working on AI.
Absolutely. We
Yeah.
need diverse teams with different backgrounds and perspectives.
Yeah, because if it's just a small group of people deciding what's okay,
Right. Then we'll end up with models that are biased.
yeah, and that could be really bad. Exactly.
And we've already seen examples of bias in AI systems.
Right, like with facial recognition and loan approvals.
Exactly. So we need to be really careful about that.
Absolutely. But going back to the model itself,
Yeah.
we talked about how it's constantly learning and evolving.
Right.
What does that actually look like?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't actually learn like we do.
Okay.
It's not like sitting in a classroom,
Right.
It learns through machine learning,
Okay.
which basically means we feed it tons of data,
Mm-hmm.
and then algorithms look for patterns in that data.
Okay.
And those patterns become the basis for its predictions and responses.
So it's more like a statistical analysis of language
Right.
than like an actual understanding of the world.
Exactly. But it's still pretty amazing that it can generate human-like text.
It really is. And the more data we give it, the better it gets.
Exactly. It's like giving it a bigger vocabulary and a better understanding of grammar and the world.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so it's exciting to think about where this will all go in the future. It is, but maybe we should come back to that continuous learning part.
Okay.
You talked about how it stays up to date with new information and trends.
Yeah, that's one of the most interesting things about these models.
What is it?
Their ability to constantly change and adapt.
Okay,
They don't just learn from the data they start with.
right.
They keep learning from every interaction and everything new they come across.
Wow.
It's like they're always reading and learning new stuff.
So they're not stuck in time.
Exactly. They evolve with the world around them.
It's like they have this never-ending curiosity.
Yeah, they always want to learn and explore.
That's a little scary, but also exciting.
It is, right? It makes you wonder what's going to happen with these models.
Yeah, and what will it mean for us?
It's definitely a lot to think about, but it's important to remember that we're in control.
Okay,
We decide how to use this technology and what the future looks like.
that's good to remember.
Yeah, it's easy to get carried away and think of these models as all-powerful,
Right.
but really they're just tools, and it's up to us to use them the right way.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the big takeaways from today.
Okay.
These models are amazing, but they're not magic.
Right.
They're complex systems built on data and algorithms.
Yeah.
And humans built them.
Right.
So it's important to understand how they work
Yeah,
if we want to use them responsibly.
I agree.
Well, I think we've covered a lot today.
We have.
We've talked about the basics of language models and like the
Yeah.
philosophical stuff too.
Right.
We've explored how they process information and learn and create those human-like responses.
It's been quite a journey.
It has.
And I have to say, I'm feeling a lot more appreciation for this technology now.
That's great.
It's complex and it has so much potential.
Yeah, we're just at the beginning of this AI thing.
It really feels like it.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see where it goes.
I can't wait.
So keep exploring and learning and asking questions.
Oh, we will.
The future of AI is being shaped right now,
Right.
and we all need to be informed and involved.
I totally agree.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Of course.
I hope you enjoyed it and learned some new things.
I definitely did.
And remember, keep those minds curious and keep
Uh-huh.
those questions coming.
I will.
See you next time.
Yeah, it does sound kind of magical, but I'm guessing there's like a little more to it than that.
Right. It's not magic, but it is pretty smart.
Okay.
It uses a bunch of different techniques like incremental learning and transfer learning.
Okay.
So basically, the model has this like foundation of knowledge, this huge neural network trained on tons of data,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't mean it stops learning.
So it's like a giant library, but it keeps getting new books.
Exactly. And the best part is it doesn't have to relearn everything when it gets new information.
Oh, okay.
It uses what it already knows to understand the new stuff.
Okay.
That's transfer learning.
Okay.
Like it can transfer its knowledge to new situations and new areas.
Right. That makes sense. It would be super inefficient to start from scratch every time. But how does it actually get this new information? Does someone have to like feed it to the model?
So that's where things get really cool.
Okay.
It uses something called online learning.
Okay.
And in online learning, the model is constantly exposed to new data,
Oh, wow.
even while it's being used.
Really?
Yeah, it's like it's always reading the news and scrolling through social media.
So it's like it's out there in the world learning on its own?
Exactly. And that's what makes these models so powerful.
Yeah.
They're not limited by just one set of data.
Okay.
They learn and grow as the world changes.
Wow. It's like they have this like endless curiosity, always wanting to learn new things.
It is pretty amazing, right?
It is a little scary, but also exciting, you know?
It is. It makes you wonder what the future holds for these models and for us.
Right. What does it all mean for humans?
Yeah, it's a lot to think about. But remember, we're the ones in control.
Okay. That's good to remember.
Yeah, we decide how we use this technology and how we shape its future.
That's a reassuring thought because it's easy to think of these models as like all powerful.
I know, right?
But at the end of the day, they're just tools.
Yeah, exactly. And we need to use them wisely.
That's a great takeaway from today's deep dive.
Right? These language models are incredible,
They really are.
but they're not magic.
Right.
They're built on data and algorithms and human ingenuity.
Yeah, it's important to understand how they work.
Exactly. If we want to use them responsibly and ethically.
Well said. I think we've covered a lot today.
We have.
From the very basics of language models to some pretty deep philosophical questions.
Yeah, we've looked at how they process information, how they learn, and how they create those responses. It sounds so human.
It's been quite a journey.
It really has.
And I have to say, I have a whole new appreciation for this technology.
I'm glad to hear that.
It's clear we're just at the start of this whole AI revolution.
Yeah, who knows where it will lead us.
I'm excited to find out.
Me too. And I hope you'll keep learning and asking questions.
No, I will.
The future of AI is happening right now.
Yeah.
And we all need to be informed and involved.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of language models.
Of course, my pleasure.
I hope you learned something new.
And remember, keep those minds curious and keep asking those questions.
I will see you next time.
Bye.